The storm came like it had a score to settle, beating the windows until the city fell into streaks of gray and silver. He had sent everyone home early. He had told himself he liked the quiet, the order, the steady hum of climate control, and the tidy stacks of plans that never talked back. Then the elevator opened, and a woman stepped through, soaked to the bone, clutching a folder like it was heat. The look in her eyes was not a plea. It was a promise that she would stand on her own feet, even if they shook. He rose without knowing why. Rules had kept his heart safe, locked behind glass, but the lock felt loose now. Rain hit the roof in fists. She said the print shop had flooded. He said nothing at first. A drip fell from her sleeve onto his floor, a small circle widening like a breath. He offered a towel. She tried to smile. Something in him bent, soft and scary. Have you ever seen a face that made your guard step aside before you could stop it? He led her past the models and framed blueprints toward the small break area. The hum of the old fridge standing in for courage. She said the shop had lost power, and the streets were flooding in the south end, and all she needed was a printer that worked and a little time. He kept his voice even, kept his eyes on a safe spot near her shoulder, handed her the towel and a mug he did not remember ever using. She wrapped her fingers around the heat and color, returned to her cheeks in slow waves. He asked about the folder, and the answer came like a door opening. Community work, youth space, color, and light. A building that gave instead of took. He felt foolish for how much it stirred him. The storm eased, then swelled. He should have sent her away. Instead, he unlocked the conference room and told her to set up. The key turned like a choice. The conference room smelled like paper and rain. She spread her pages under the warm track lights, and his careful world tilted. There were sketches of a roof with cutouts that threw sun onto a painted court. A mural wall mapped to the stories of kids who would mark their height each year. A corner shaped for a father and a child to talk without noise. She spoke with quick hands and a soft voice that steadied as she went, and he heard the truth behind her calm. She knew what it felt like to be pushed aside, and she was not designing pity. She was building pride. He asked a question about cost. She countered with phases and partnerships. He asked about safety. She showed sightlines and daylight. He caught himself smiling. The storm stepped back like it was listening. He said the work was good. She met his eyes and said, simple as a fact, that it was needed. Something in his chest unclenched. The power dipped and returned with a hiccup, and they both laughed, easy and surprised. He fetched a spare hoodie from a forgotten drawer, told her not to ask why it was there, and she slid it on over the blouse with a grateful sigh that made the room feel less like work and more like shelter. She spoke of the flood, the ceiling that gave way, the neighbor she checked on before grabbing her bag. He spoke of the project he had killed last year because the client wanted glass without people, and how he still woke angry about it. The clock moved without noise. They shared quiet the way tired people do. No decoration, just breath and honesty. He realized he had not thought about the old hurt for several minutes. She realized she was warm. Outside, the storm began to drift east, and the city lights sharpened as if someone wiped a window clean. Near midnight, the elevators paused and the building sighed. He walked her to the lobby and found a yellow warning cone by a slow leak, a little river making its own path. She said she would call a ride, then frowned at the surge maps on her phone. He offered a company car. She shook her head, said she could wait it out. The quiet between them felt different now, not empty, but expect. He shrugged off his suit jacket and set it over her shoulders without ceremony. She looked down at the fit and then up at him, and the air shifted again. The rain softened to a whisper across the glass. A message pinged on his screen from a number he had not saved, but could not forget. He did not open it. She said thank you like a truth, not a polite phrase. He said it was nothing, and knew it was not. The night held its breath for what came next. Morning came with the kind of clean light that makes everything look newly decided. He told himself last night had been a courtesy, A small kindness any decent person would offer, nothing more. He left a guest badge on the conference table, a note about printer codes, and a schedule that kept him busy on other floors. She arrived early anyway, hair soft and lifted, eyes taking in the room like it was a studio she had dreamed about. They spoke in short lines, practical and plain. He asked what files she needed. She asked where the outlets were strongest. But small things kept breaking the distance. Her laugh when the scanner stalled, his quiet grin when she fixed it with a tap, the way she hummed as she laid out color proofs. He kept a rule in his head. No stories, no closeness, only work. Then she told him about a kid who painted a sunrise with nothing but orange and white, and he heard himself ask what the boy's name was. The rule slipped, almost gentle. By noon, the storm had moved on, but its echo stayed in the way people moved through the office, slower, kinder. He took her to the model room and pointed out the mock-ups like a careful tour guide, giving facts without feeling. She ran her fingers along a tiny stair and talked about how kids run faster when they sense they belong. He kept his hands in his pockets so he would not reach for the truth that sat close to hers. They circled a massing model of a community center he had pushed for, the one that lost funding when a sponsor wanted shine over service. He called it a wound that could become wisdom if he let it. The word hovered, soft but honest. He showed her the back room where extras were kept and said she could use whatever she needed. She thanked him like she meant it. The air felt warmer than it should for a room made of glass and steel. After lunch, he tried to reset the day. Oh, meetings, emails, a call with a client who wanted a lobby to feel like a statement. He muted his side and watched her through the glass. Not on purpose, he told himself, just making sure she had what she needed. She worked like a person who trusted time, steady, focused, unfancy. When the call ended, he brought over a fresh set of plotter sheets and a small box of binder clips from his own drawer. She teased that a man who rejected every woman might have a secret soft spot for office supplies. He lifted a brow, almost smiling. Asked who told her that story. She said people talk. He said people are often wrong. She nodded as if she believed him, and that did something strange to his chest. He asked if she wanted coffee. She said yes if he took a break too. They stood side by side at the machine, silence easy as steam rose. They ran prints to the rooftop terrace because the ventilation there was strongest, and the sky over Atlanta held the pale blue of a truce. Wind lifted the edges of pages, and her curls danced with it. He taped corners in neat lines while she marked changes in a blue pencil that matched her calm voice. When a sheet caught air and slid toward the ledge, he moved fast and caught it with one hand. She laughed, relieved, then turned serious and said she hated losing things that mattered. He heard more under the words and did not press, but he shifted closer so the wind would hit him first. A text lit at his phone from the same number as last night. He watched it fade without opening it. She saw the shadow cross his face and said she could finish alone. He said no. He was fine. It felt good to mean it. The city breathed around them like a big, steady heart. Evening drew long lines across the floor as the building emptied. He offered to ride the elevator down with her, and she did not make it a big thing. Just nodded like it was natural. In the slow mirrored box, they stood shoulder to shoulder with a careful inch of air between them. She asked why he became an architect. He said his father loved tools and his mother loved light, and he found a way to hold both. She said that was a good answer. He asked why she kept fighting for a project that kept losing ground. She said because she knew what it felt like to need a place that chose you on purpose. The elevator chimed. In the lobby, the glass showed a city drying off, the streets slick and shining like fresh paint. He handed her a tube for the prints and said he could walk her to the curb. She looked at his face, not his suit, and said yes. Outside, The air smelled like rain and second chances. They settled into a rhythm that felt like a song only they could hear. The building was quieter at night. The kind of quiet that makes a whisper feel loud. The kind that lets truth step closer. She worked in small, steady circles, trimming edges, labeling sets, humming a tune from childhood that tasted like Sundays and sunlight. He checked dimensions, marked revisions, and found himself telling small stories he did not tell anyone else. About drawing houses in the margins of math sheets. About a summer he rebuilt a porch with hands that bled and healed. She laughed at the right places and never rushed him when silence came. A takeout box cooled between them before they noticed they were sharing it. The city lights pressed against the glass like curious eyes. When she asked what he wanted the building to feel like, not look like, he tried to answer and found the words caught at the edge of his throat. He cleared it and started again. They took a ride out to the empty lot at dusk, where weeds reached between broken concrete and the wind carried the smell of cut grass from a field nearby. She asked him to stand where the main door would be and close his eyes. He did. She told him to listen. Traffic like a river, a train far off, a basketball thump, a laugh that might come from a kid who thinks he can fly. He opened his eyes and saw more than a lot. He saw a morning line of parents with coffee, a late afternoon choir of sneakers. The way light might pour through a high window and fall on a tired face like a blessing. He told her about a roof line that could lift the whole block. She told him about painting guides the kids could fill in year after year. The sky turned soft pink and gold, and a stray dog trotted by without stopping. They drew with their feet in dust, and the plan felt suddenly easy, like it had been waiting for them. Back at the office, rain-free and bright, they pulled a late one that felt more like a hangout than grind. She played a playlist she kept for courage, soft R&B with bass that made the glass hum. He surprised himself by knowing the hook on a track from years ago, and she teased him about hidden layers. He leaned into the joke, let it be easy. Between songs, they talked about food from home, the way a pot of greens can change a room, the way a song can carry a person through a hard day. He sketched a roof cut like a smile. She colored it with notes for shade and airflow. When the printer jammed, they laughed so hard it scared a passing cleaner, who waved and vanished before either could speak. The laughter lingered after the room went still again, and the stillness did not feel empty. It felt like a door they had both decided to leave. Opened near midnight, the floor was theirs alone. He set 2 mugs on the sill and told a story he had kept folded small inside him, how he once gave his whole heart to someone who loved the shine more than the man, how he learned to say no before anyone could say it to him. She listened without fixing it, just listened, and that felt like medicine. When he finished, she told him about the flood last year, and the way it took walls first, then small things, photos, sketchbooks, the notes her aunt wrote when she taught her to draw. She said she learned to hold value in her hands, not on shelves. He looked at her with the kind of care that does not show off. She looked back with the kind that does not run. The clock kept time like a soft drum. The quiet they shared after was not a gap. It was a bridge. He did not reach across it. Not yet. But he knew how. They packed up slow, both pretending the hour was not as late as it was. He rolled the final set and reached for the tube the same moment she did. Their fingers touched, warm and sure. It was nothing and everything. The air thinned, not with danger but with choice. He searched her face for a sign, not permission, just truth. She did not look away. The elevator pinged in the hall like a reminder that life keeps moving whether hearts keep up or not. A buzz lit his phone again, that same number, a name he had trained himself not to say. He turned the screen over. She asked, quiet, if there was anything he needed to handle. He said, not tonight. The lights clicked to night mode, and the room cooled a shade. He stepped back and held the door open for her. She walked past, close enough for a brush of air and a small, brave smile. The promise hung there, delicate and real, waiting for Morning. Morning tried to play it cool, but trouble showed up early, riding on a chime from a phone that had been face down all week. He ignored the first alert, then the second, then the call that made the screen bloom with a name he had trained himself not to read. Ow! By the time the elevator opened, the air in the studio felt thinner, and the small, steady piece they had built seemed to wobble on its legs. She set fresh prints on the table and spoke about paint schedules and volunteers. He answered, careful and light, like he could steer the day away from a cliff with tone alone. The lobby buzzed. A receptionist said a visitor waited without an appointment, voice bright to hide the warning under it. He said he would be right there. She caught the shift in his jaw and asked if he wanted her to keep going. He said please. The word felt heavier than it should. He walked toward the glass doors like a man stepping back into weather, hoping the roof he had built inside himself would hold. The cafe across the street knew his order by habit. The person at the corner table knew his history by heart. They did not touch. They used voices meant for public places and looked at the steam instead of each other when the old story got close. Promises made when everything glittered. Promises bent when attention did. He kept his tone even, asking simple questions, but the answers slipped under his skin, the way rain finds seams. She said she was back for work, not him, that a client wanted her firm to shape the message on a civic build, that the city watched and the cameras would too. He knew how easy it was to mix purpose with performance. Through the window, he could see the studio lights across the street and a figure moving with quiet focus. The picture in the glass made the choice feel clear and hard at the same time. He said the project was not a stage. She said every project was a stage whether he liked it or not. The cups cooled. Neither reached for a refill. Back upstairs, the day kept pace, but the rhythm changed. She felt it before she knew the reason. Tiny pauses where there had been ease. A careful choice of words where there had been flow. She asked if the meeting went well. He said it was complicated, then stopped, as if that single word could hold back a tide. She folded her notes, breathed once, and said she did not need every detail, only the truth that mattered to the work and to them. He told her the visitor would be attached to the project's public face. The sentence landed like a dropped wrench. She nodded, lips even, but inside she counted the ways shine could swallow substance, how a camera could turn kids into backdrop if no one fought for their names. He said he would handle it. She said she believed him. The room, loyal as always, held their silence without breaking. They returned to measurements like people patching a roof during rain, each nail tapped with care that tried not to look like fear. The client review filled the big room with voices and tidy smiles. Rendering stood on easels like polished answers to questions no one had asked yet. She presented first, clear and grounded, speaking of safe corners in daylight, of a wall that could carry stories without turning them into ads. The room leaned in. Then the public plan arrived, wrapped in perfect language and a promise of reach. The pitch was smooth as glass, the kind that reflects so well you forget to look through. He stood between them, the builder of bones and the maker of image, and tried to keep both from swallowing the other. Questions flew, budgets pressed. A camera blinked, red in the back, and turned the air sharper. When the meeting closed, he felt the weight of two paths, both paved, one pointing to easy applause, one toward a fight that would matter. He looked for the eyes that had kept him honest all week. They were steady, but a shadow had moved in behind them. Night took the room back after the last handshake. He closed the door and the quiet came down like a curtain. She gathered her pages in slow, neat stacks, the way people move when words feel slippery. He said the work would not be turned into a brand on his watch. She said she knew his intent. She was less sure about the wind around them. He stepped closer, meaning to make the air simple again, and the phone lit between them with a message that used memories like bait. He did not touch it. She looked at the light, then at his face, and asked a small, honest question. What did the past still want from him? He did not have an answer that would fit in the room. She nodded, as if that was an answer anyway. The city hummed beyond the glass like a steady drumbeat. She said she would be early in the morning. He said he would be here. When she left, the door eased shut with a soft click that sounded like a choice put on hold. Morning arrived bright and sharp, like it wanted to scrub the night clean, but the air between them would not clear. He stood with a list of tasks that sounded like care and felt like armor. She answered with updates that sounded like progress and felt like distance. The message light on his phone stayed silent, yet its memory kept flashing in the corner of the room. They reviewed timelines, permits, volunteers, every safe word that could be said when the real words were harder. Then a small thing bent the day. A media email that placed cameras before kids, shine before shelter. He said it was typical, they would manage. She asked who was we, and the way the word fell made the floor tilt. He tried to fix it with calm, said nothing was changing. She stared at the table and said everything was changing and maybe they were pretending not to see it. Silence pressed down. He wanted to reach for her hand. He reached for a pen instead. The lie of that choice rang in both of their ears. By noon, the meeting room filled with people who loved the sound of their own plans. The pitch for a launch event bloomed with lights and banners, and polished talking points that left no space for breath. She tried to speak for the kids whose names would never trend, for the elders whose stories needed time more than cameras. He supported her, but too carefully, like a person balancing on a thin beam, while the room watched for a wobble. When questions turned to exposure and metrics, she asked who would stand with the families when the crew left. A smile from across the table slid over the real cost like glass on a wound. He felt anger rise and clamp down just as fast. Afterward, in the hall that smelled like toner and nerves, she asked if he trusted her judgment or if he trusted the noise more. He said he had to play the board to protect the build. She asked when protecting becomes hiding. His answer sounded reasonable. It did not sound true. They escaped to the rooftop where wind could cut the sheen off words. Paper pinned under blue tape rattled like small flags trying to hold their ground. She said she could not build a doorway that led to a stage. She was building a home. He said the stage would get them funding for the home. She asked what part of himself he had to give up every time he chose a spotlight. He did not answer fast. And the pause did damage. A buzz blinked on his phone again. A familiar name with a familiar pull. And that was the last thread. She said she would not stand beside a heart that was half turned. He said she was making a storm out of weather. The words came too sharp. Her eyes went glossy and hard, and she blinked the shine back into sky. Wind lifted a sheet and he caught it by reflex, but he could not catch the falling in her face. The city hummed. A siren passed far below. She said she would return the hoodie tonight. He said there was no rush. Both lines landed like doors, closing. Evening poured down the glass when the past arrived, dressed like opportunity. The media team walked the space with fast feet and bright length. The strategist from the cafe smiled like a secret and spoke about angles that would make everyone look generous. He stood still and felt himself splitting. One part ready to fight, one part too tired to push against a tide that never sleeps. The woman he had once loved asked for a shot of him at the window, a hero frame. He refused. The refusal came late. She suggested a moment with the designer for chemistry. That word burned. He said the project did not need romance. It needed care. The camera turned anyway, and in the lens he saw a picture where he was a man who let noise drown truth. Across the room, the person who had walked in, soaked and steady, now packed a bag slow, like someone leaving a safe house they had built with their own hands. He called her name in his head and could not speak it out loud. Night took the office, left the streetlights to draw thin gold ladders on the floor. The crew was gone, the emails quiet, the city soft again. He found her by the elevator with the hoodie folded small, as if carefulness could make the leaving easier. He said he was sorry for the way he let old ghosts speak for him. She said she was sorry for wanting him to choose faster than he knew how. He stepped closer and told the truth plain. He wanted to build this place with her and stand beside her outside the renderings. But he had spent years training himself not to need anyone, and unlearning takes time. She said time is not the same as distance. The elevator chimed like a timer on a test. No one asked to take. He asked her to stay on the project. She said yes without smiling, because the yes hurt. She placed the hoodie in his hands and kept her eyes on his. The doors opened. She stepped in. He did not follow. The separate silence that settled felt like a crack and a promise at once. The office felt different without her voice inside it, like a familiar song played on a low, distant radio. He stayed late, not for work, but to sit with the quiet he had been dodging. He spread their drawings across the table and traced the lines they made when they challenged each other, when they laughed, when they chose the hard path over the easy show. The phone lay face down, the old number sleeping there like a door he finally knew not to open. He thought about how long he had practiced being untouchable. How many good things he had kept at arm's length, because pride said it was safer. He remembered the way her eyes stayed on him when the room wanted a hero shot, remembered the steadiness that never needed a camera. He could hear his father's careful hands in the click of a steel ruler, his mother's love of light in the glow on paper. He picked up a pen, crossed out the media plan, and wrote a note that started with the only honest word left. Sorry. The pen shook. He let it. At dawn, he drove to the empty lot and parked by the fence where vines tried to turn steel into something softer. The city stretched awake around him, buzzes yawning, a jogger's steady feet, a grocery truck sighing at the curb. He stepped onto the cracked concrete and walked the outline they had dreamed, reading the map they made with their feet and hope. He tried to hear what she had taught him to listen for. The ball, the laughter, the morning line of parents who would one day lean on railings that did not slip. He said the plans out loud like a prayer. Safe corners, sightlines, a roof that lifts. He felt small and right at the same time. A gust pushed dust across his shoes, and he understood how easily noise could erase care. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to end the partnership with the Shine, not for drama but for peace. He sent it with no flourish. The screen went quiet. The lot felt bigger for it. He looked toward the sky and pictured light falling on faces that needed it most. He met the past in a room with glass walls, so no one could mistake what was said. He chose gentle first, the way you talk when you respect what once held you up. Then firm, the way you speak when you know what must be protected now. He said the project could not be a mirror for anyone's image, his included. It had to be a window for the people it served. She countered with reach and momentum, and all the words that had once felt like wind at his back. He did not get angry. He let the quiet do the work. He told her he wished her well, and he meant it, but he would not trade story for shine. The old pull came and went like a tide hitting a stronger shore. When he stood, his voice stayed steady. When he walked away, his heartbeat did too. In the elevator, he looked at his reflection and saw a man who could choose a future without proving himself to a camp. He smiled once, small, private. It felt like a door closing and another opening on the same hinge. That evening, he went to her block with no speech in his pocket, only truth. The streets held the memory of last week's water. Silt on curbs, a sagging flyer, the smell of wet wood finally drying. A laundromat glowed like a small lighthouse, and through the glass he saw her folding shirts with the kind of care that makes humble things holy. He stepped inside, and the bell gave them both away. He did not look for a clever start. He said he had cut the cameras out, said he was done letting the past speak for the present, said he had been wrong and afraid and tired of both. She kept folding until she didn't. She asked what would be different tomorrow, not someday. He told her the contract had changed today, that he wanted her voice beside his when hard meetings tried to drown it, that he would be loud where it mattered and quiet where it didn't. The dryers spun like soft thunder. She nodded. Once, not a surrender, but a test he accepted. The night felt warmer by a few degrees. They met back at the studio just as the sky turned the deep blue of decisions. He laid out a revised plan set. No media rollout. A community meeting first. Phased builds that put safe corners ahead of shiny glass. He did not ask her to forgive him. He asked her to help him do it right. She read every page like it mattered because it did. She caught a small flaw in a sightline and he thanked her without defense. They stood shoulder to shoulder by the window and watched the city breathe. He told her he had spent years choosing distance so no one could leave him again, and that the cost had been too high. She said fear can build walls as clean as any blueprint, and sometimes the bravest plan is a door. He laughed once, soft, because it was true, and because it was hers. When the lights switched to night mode, he reached for her hand and paused half an inch away. She closed the distance with a simple touch that felt steady, not dramatic. They stayed like that, not fixed, but moving in the same direction. The community meeting filled the gym with folding chairs that creaked and voices that mattered more than any spotlight ever could. He stood at the front with notes he barely needed, because the plan had been lived more than written. She moved through the crowd like a host and a neighbor, greeting elders by name, crouching to hear a kid describe where the mural should bend so sunlight would look like a ribbon. When he spoke about safe corners and sightlines, he didn't sell. He invited. Questions came plain. Where will my grandson wait for me after practice? How loud will the roof be when it rains? Who decides what stories go on the wall? She answered with patience and a steady smile, then handed the mic to a teen who said he wanted a place to miss on purpose. Laughter smudged into applause. He watched her eyes shine and felt something unclench again, this time without fear. They were not perfect. They were present. And for once, that was enough to carry the room. Work began without fanfare. No ribbon, no countdown. Just people showing up with gloves and stories. Work. He hauled lumber in a rhythm that felt like prayer, traded jokes with a mason who shaped corners like he was coaxing them into kindness, and learned how silence can be useful when it keeps you listening. She organized drop-offs for paint and books, set a sign-in table with markers that didn't run, and kept a running list of names for the mural wall because names were the point. When a beam refused its place, he called for a pause and she arrived without asking, shoulder to shoulder as they measured again. It fit the second time. They grinned like kids who just figured out a secret. By afternoon, the frame cast a new shadow across the lot, a promise sketched in wood. He looked at her, sweaty and calm, and felt the simple, startling ease of knowing the future didn't need announcement to be real. It only needed steady hands and the courage to keep showing up. Close to dusk, they took a slow lap around what would soon be rooms, hallways that still smelled like pine, a future office marked in chalk, a corner where windows would pour daylight like grace. She stopped at the mural wall outline and set her palm on the plywood, as if testing a heartbeat. He stood behind her, not crowding, but near enough that the warmth between them felt like shelter. He told her he'd added a small canopy at the entrance for rainy days, when kids ran in with wet shoes and big news, a place to shake off weather without having to rush. She said she'd designed floor guides for storytelling circles so any adult, shy or loud, could start something soft that might turn into change. They didn't make a speech about forgiveness. They didn't name what they were building between them. Instead, he pointed to the roofline, and she pictured it skimming sunlight into the court. The sky went peach, and the frame's shadow stretched long like a blessing. No one had to announce. Opening day arrived small and perfect. No stage, just a ribbon held by two elders and a pair of kind scissors that had cut church programs for decades. Kids tried out the court lines with bouncing steps. Parents leaned on railings that didn't wobble. A baby slept on a shoulder while laughter moved like wind. He gave a brief welcome that sounded like gratitude instead of credit, then stepped aside for a teen who read one of the first mural stories about walking past fear and finding a door that stayed open even when no one was watching. She stood with the aunties at the snack table, laughing at inside jokes and making sure every little hand found fruit before cookies. When their eyes met across the crowd, the look said more than a speech. We did this right. Later, under the canopy, a sudden shower passed and kids ran in just as planned, squealing, leaving wet sneaker prints that looked like signatures. He caught her hand. She let him keep it. The rain ended. The welcome did. That night, after the last broom leaned quiet and the lights dimmed to a hush, they walked the building the way you walk a newborn home. Slow, careful, awed. In the court, he lay back on polished floor and pointed at nothing just to hear her laugh. In the reading room, she tucked a stray chair under a table as if straightening a collar before a portrait. They found the small bench by the high window where morning would pour in and sat without words. He told her he didn't want a grand ending. He wanted the kind that keeps showing up, the kind that grows when no one's filming. She said love isn't a stage. It's a set of small, faithful choices. The city hummed like a lullaby outside the glass. He asked if she would come by early tomorrow to watch the first sunrise through the cutouts they'd argued for and then built together. She nodded and rested her head on his shoulder. The quiet closed around them, gentle and sure, a door left open on purpose.